chapter 9. Last week we talked about the dispensation of human government. And it continues to this day. And man's responsibility in the third dispensation is to do all known good, refrain from all known evil, and worship God by blood sacrifice, establish human government and capital punishment for murder. And man must refrain from the consumption of blood. And man may now eat all animal flesh as well as plants. That's the new dispensation. Then we talked about the Noahic covenant, the covenant that God made with Noah. And it has only one condition to it, and it's unconditional. God promises to never destroy the earth by a universal flood ever again. And God said, I'm going to put a rainbow in the clouds as a token of my promise. Then we talked about the entire population of the earth, the proliferation of the human race on all islands and continents except Antarctica, originated with Noah and his 3 sons. It tells us that. Verse 19, these are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. We've also talked, before the flood, we talked about how the universal flood was a historical event that actually happened in history. And what evolutionists and people who don't believe the Bible, they don't realize that if mankind had been around for as long as they say, there'd be like 75 billion people on the earth, right now. But the population of the earth began to grow. Everybody was wiped out, and the population of the earth began to grow from Noah and his 3 sons. And the average population growth has always been about 2%. And that's including famines and wars, devastating wars throughout the years if you take the average. And taking the average, starting with Noah, his 3 sons, and their wives, you have 8 persons. Starting with them until today, you come out just about the same 7.5 billion people on the face of the earth, if evolution is true. And the people who claim the earth is way, way old, and man has been on the earth like 1 million years, 500,000 years, the way we, they say we started about 1 million years ago, and then we evolved to what more intelligent creatures about 500,000 years ago, or even 100,000 years ago. You wouldn't have enough room to stand around in it. You couldn't get on the highway. I mean, it's just that's a nasty little fact of mathematics. They won't ignore that. Then we talked about an unusual thing of Noah's shame and Ham's sin. I want to pick up the narrative in verse chapter 9, and we're going to talk about it one more time. Verse 18, and the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. He didn't say, Cursed be Ham. He said, Cursed be Canaan, and we had a discussion, why did why did Noah curse Canaan instead of Ham? So last week, I read an alternate interpretation of this scripture. Now, what I've always taught and believed is that Canaan was cursed because Canaan didn't go to Africa. He went to the Middle East, and the Middle East belongs to the Jew. God gave it to Jew, and they got cursed and got wiped out in the wars. The Canaanites were just totally wiped out, and I believe that's the curse that Noah's talking about here. Now, a lot of people disagree with me. You know, Ruckman just says that's not so. Bob Jones says that's not so. In my Bible school, they all say Ham was cursed, and I'm sure some of you all believe that too. And I'm not going to split hairs with you on that. But our sister Janice was over at the house, and she wanted to know. She asked me something about the ages of Noah's sons. Verse 24 says his younger son had done unto him. So I've always taught that Ham was the youngest. Then over in chapter 10, verse 21, it says, unto Shem also the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder. Even to him were children born. So I've always taught that Japheth was the oldest, Shem was the middle child, and Ham was the younger. Now, I read an alternate interpretation this week, and I want to put it out to you. And I don't know, just an interpretation. This man believes that it was Canaan who did the thing to Noah, not Ham. Because it says, and Noah woke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him, and said, cursed be Canaan. So his interpretation is that by the time they got off the ark, Noah had time to make a vineyard, and we don't know how much time had passed. One of the boys named Canaan, we know he's a son of Ham. One of the boys named Canaan was old enough, and he committed some kind of act on Noah. And that's why he was cursed, because it says his younger son. And so that could mean, according to this interpretation, that you had Ham, Shem, and Japheth, but then you had a grandson who was named Canaan, who was the youngest of all those. His younger son was the one who did the sin. I just wanted to throw that out to you. See what you have to say. Think about that. So y'all mull that around and ask me questions about it later on. Okay. Now let's, we're ready for page 21. Has everybody got page 21? All right.
No.
This should be plenty of page 21. And we're going to talk about the sons of Noah. Noah is the 10th from Adam, and he's called the father of the Gentiles. So let's read the first 5 verses. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons were born after the flood. So Canaan came after the flood. And after the vineyard. But anyway, verse 2, the sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog, Madai and Javan, and Tubal, Meshech, and Tyrus. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Rithpath, Togarmah, and the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. Now, of course, all these boys were born before the Tower of Babel. But after the Tower of Babel, and they began, all these sons of Noah began to be scattered on the earth. At that time, every one of them was after his tongue, after their families in their nations. So that's the sons of Japheth. And I've got a little chart here in your handout. We have Gomer, and he's the father of the Celtic peoples. His son Ashkenaz settled in present-day Germany. And as a matter of fact, that area is still called Ashkenaz or Ashkenaz. And Jews that are settled in that country are called Ashkenazi Jews. So that goes all the way back to the grandsons of Noah. Then you have Magog, Eastern Slavic peoples, like Russia and the Caucasus Mountains. You know the Slavic races. You know Russian race is a little bit different from the Vikings and Italians and things like that. Then you have Madai, Persian peoples, Indo-European, Germanic, Nordic. The Persian peoples settled around a river in India called the Indus River. That's where India comes from. The word India comes from. But it's surprising to find out that our ancestors started out there and actually migrated up to the Caucasus Mountains. That's where we get our name Caucasians. And then they went on over into Europe, Germany, England, Anglo-Saxons, things like that. They started out over there, and the reason they know that is because they've been able to trace our alphabet and our language all the way back to these people. In their alphabet and language. And we look a lot like them. Now, it's been my privilege to know some Arabic people and some Persian people in my lifetime, just be acquainted with them. And I was first acquainted with them over in Tennessee Tech. I enjoyed meeting foreigners and mingling with them and finding out about them. But one thing about the Persian people, they did not want to be called Arabic. And they said, we are of a different race than the Arabs are. And they did not want to be called Arabic. And the last time I was mingling with some Persian people was down in Pensacola, Jacksonville, Florida. I took Miss Schoolfield down there to the Mayo Clinic and went to a men's shop. And that men's shop was owned and operated from people from Iran, which is Persia. Iran. They had escaped, oppression and come to America and made a new life for themselves. And, they're really beautiful looking people. And they look a lot like us. Oh, I didn't realize it. Those are supposed to be separated. Those two statements, they're not supposed to go together. And then you have Javan, they're the Mediterranean peoples. They're like Greek, Spanish, Italians. Mediterranean races are a little bit different than, Norway and Anglo-Saxon. Then you have Tubal, the Assyrian races. And these people are believed to be assimilated. And then you have Meshech, unknown race that was allied with the Assyrians and lived north of them, believed to have been assimilated with the Russians. And we have Tyrus, a race that dwelled in the Aegean Sea Islands, believed to be assimilated with the Mediterranean people. Most of the grandsons of Japheth migrated little by little until they populated Europe and the islands and the lands near it. So that's where we come from. Now, the reason we know about these races, we didn't have photos. We don't have photos of all those folks. But the reason we believe that Ham is the father of the black people, and Japheth is the father of the white people, and Shem is the father of the yellow people or Oriental people. The reason we believe that is because where they migrated to. All of Japheth's people migrated to Europe. Ham's people migrated to Africa. And Shem's people migrated to Asia. Now, I know there's some exceptions in there, but that's basically where they all migrated from, excuse me. And so we believe that's where the races began. Now, that's a big controversy. Where did the races begin? And nobody knows. We just know that Ham is the father of blacks, Japheth is the father of whites, and Shem is the father of yellow people, or if you want to say it that way. That's all we know. Where they actually, how it happened, I don't know. Some people think that Cain was cursed and became black. That was the mark of Cain. Well, his children being black. Well, then one of Noah's sons married a black woman, Ham man. And that's how people turn black. But that don't explain white and don't explain Shem either. I mean, there's just no way of knowing. We'll find out one of these days. Now, most of the fundamentalists years ago, 120 years ago, they taught that when God scrambled up the languages and confused everybody with languages, and when God made the different languages, at that time, He also made the races. And that, I'm not going to argue with that, but there's nothing to indicate that. But I guess that's as good as any. And we do find that the European languages are all kin to one another. And the Oriental languages are kin to one another. They use pictographs. You've seen them, haven't you? And African languages are kin to one another. But that could be explained in many other different ways. But there's just so much we just don't know. And we'll find out. I'm not sure how important it is. All right, sons of Ham. Let's look at verse 6. And the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim and Phut and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Seba and Havilah and Sabbath and Raamah and Sabteca. And the sons of Raamah, Sheba and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Asher, and builded Nineveh, and the city Rehoboth, and Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. The same is a great city. And Mizraim begat Ludum, and Ananim, and Lehabim, and Naphtahim, and Pathrusim, and Casluhim, out of whom came Philistinum, and Caphtorim. So the Philistines have their ancestry in Ham. And Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgasite, and the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Semite, and the Arbatite, and the Zemarite, and the Hamathite, and afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. So you recognize some of these names because when the Jews came into the land of Canaan, you run upon Jebusite and Girgasite. They're not supposed to be there. They're supposed to be down in Africa. There's plenty of room down in Africa. Plenty of rivers, plenty of fertile soil, plenty of valleys, plenty of a grazing area for cattle. I mean, Africa is a rich continent. And it could be easily inhabited, and there could be a lot of growth there. But they didn't go down there. They stayed in a place they weren't supposed to. And the border of Canaanites was from Sidon as thou comest to Gerar unto Gaza, as thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim, even unto Lasha. These are the sons of Ham after their families, after their tongues, in their countries and in their nations. All right, let's talk about sons of Ham. We have Cush, and that's the Ethiopians. And it's the same Hebrew word as when we say Ethiopians, in a Hebrew they say Cush. Mizraim is the Egyptians, same Hebrew word. Phut is the Libyans, Middle North African races, Libya. Hey, you know, that's where they come from. Muammar Gaddafi. And then you have Canaan, the Canaanites. Now notice, all these the three top ones, they all went to Africa. Canaan didn't go to Africa. He's supposed to go to Africa. He didn't go. That's the land God has set aside for the nation of Israel, for the lineal descendants of Jacob. Let's talk a little bit about Nimrod. He's the son of Cush. This man was the first great world ruler after the flood. His kingdom was the whole land of Shinar and included Babel, later Babylon, same place. He was the great-grandson of Noah and the 13th from Adam. And his name means rebellion. He's a type of Antichrist. He's connected to a one-world government and one-world language. Alexander Hislop documents in his foundational work on the Roman Catholic Church that Nimrod enforced a one-world religion. And you can see that there's a book out called The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. Hislop also traces the religion of Nimrod through the ages to the Church of Rome. He actually shows that the Roman Catholic Church is worshiping the same religion as Nimrod. They just changed the names, you know. The names have been changed, protect the innocent, that kind of stuff. Most of the grandsons of Ham migrated south and populated Africa and the islands around it. Some mingled with the sons and grandsons of Japheth and Shem. So, I believe we have found why Canaan was cursed, because he went to a land that God had set aside for Israel. But that's my opinion. I'm not going to. I realize I'm in the minority in fundamentalism and in King James onlyism. Okay. Let's look at the sons of Shem. Verse 21. Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder, even to him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam and Asher, Arphaxad and Lud and Aram. And the children of Aram, Uz and Hul and Gether and Mash. Now remember, when you read the book of Job, he's the greatest in the land of what? Uz. Right? Mm-hmm. So this man left his name on area, like many people do. And Arphaxad begat Selah, and Selah begat Eber. And unto Eber was born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Now, it says in his days was the earth divided. We believe that That's when the Tower of Babel happened, and God confused the languages during the lifetime of this man Peleg. Because in his days was the earth divided. Have y'all heard any other interpretation of this?
Continental drift. That was when the continents started to drift apart, because it kind of looks like they fit together, that theory.
I never heard that. I've heard of continental drift.
But yeah, I would agree that the confusion of tongues and the scattering of the people in the Tower of Babel is way more likely.
Yeah, when you say the earth divided, you mean the population of the earth divided. That's used, that's just a common figure of speech. When you say, he came to save the world, he's talking about the people of the world. All right, and Joktan begat Almodad, and Sheleph, and Azramite, and Jerah, and Adoram, and Uzal, and Diklah. Now, I've listened to Alexander Scorby read these, but I can't remember all of the pronunciation. And Obal, and Abmael, and Sheba, and Ophir, and Havilah, and Jobab, and all these were the sons of Joktan. And their dwelling was from Mesha, as thou goest unto Sephar, a mount of the east. These are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations, in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. So the sons of Shem, we know that Elam immigrated east of Mesopotamia. We know that Asher mingled with and lived with the Hamites in Shinar. We know Arphaxad settled in Mesopotamia. He's the forefather of Abraham and Eber. This guy settled in Mesopotamia. That's the land between the rivers. That's what that means. Tigris and Euphrates River. Lud, it's believed to have settled in Asia Minor. And Aram, believed to have settled in Syria. Some of these things we just don't know. You got to understand, after hundreds of years, races begin to be blurred because they mingle. And I do not believe God ever intended for the races to mingle. But they do, they mingle, and sub races just disappear off the face of the earth. And that's why Napoleon said that one guy asked him, would you, they were sitting around a campfire, some of the soldiers and the French officers, and they asked Napoleon, can you tell us a proof of God? And you only have to say one word. And all of them were thinking, how can I prove God by saying one word? Napoleon said, Jew. Here is an ancient subrace of people who still exist today. I don't think you could find anybody else like that, except in the extreme ends like the yellow, extreme ends of Oriental, and the extreme ends of the white people in the Nordic areas, Anglo-Saxons, people like that. All the other mingled races have just kind of blurred. But the Jew is still the Jew. So Napoleon said, somebody had to do that. And of course, God's had several promises to the Jew that have not yet been fulfilled. So the Jew's going to be around for God's promises. All right, the Hebrews get their name from their forefather named Eber. Some of the grandsons of Shem remained in the Near East, but most of them migrated east and eventually populated Asia and the eastern Pacific Rim islands and land. Okay, page 22. Chapter 11, the end of the dispensation of human government. So far, we had the age of innocence that ended in a catastrophe. Adam and Eve both disobeyed God, got thrown out of the garden. Then you had the dispensation of conscience. Men were supposed to go by their conscience. What happened? The earth was filled with violence. So bad that God had to flood out and kill, destroy the earth, population of the earth. So God said, look, we'll put in human government. So you can regulate these things. And so that lasted to the Tower of Babel. What did man do with his human government? He said, let's get together and build us a tower. We'll have a government project going on. We'll tax people. We'll get all the money we need. We'll get all the workers we need. We'll build us a tower. And God said, okay, human government's going to end. All right, the Tower of Babel. Let's read the first 3 verses. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. So the whole world was of one language. That makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. You had 8 people get off the ark, and they all spoke the same language, right? Well, our children would have spoken the same language, right? And they were highly advanced because they'd been used to living 800, 900 years. So you know they knew how to read and write and pass on their traditions onto their children. So it makes perfect sense that everybody spoke the exact same language. And it indicates common usage as in figures of speech. Now verses 1 through 3, these verses describe a building and development of a one-world society, government and language. This society would consist of a one-world religion and a mixture of races into one race. The capital of this government would be a beautiful city around a gigantic tower. Now, if all the people from Noah's flood are gathered together, and they're already different races, and they all speak the same language, and they're all under the same one-world government, do you think they're going to mix together to form one race? I mean, it's almost inevitable. And even today, the one-world people are saying the problem is racism. We got to stamp out racism, because that's causing too much conflict. So what they propose is all the races intermarrying together, and they called it the universal brown man. They said if we can get everybody mixing together, we'll have the universal brown man, and we won't have any racial conflicts because everybody be of the same race, right? Well, you got problems, buddy. Don't think. Do white people shoot each other? No. Do they rob each other? Do black people rob each other and shoot each other? Do Oriental people? Hey, you're not going to solve any problems because you do not understand the basic depravity of mankind. Oh, let's just take everybody's guns away from them. That way they won't shoot anybody. Oh, really? Think that'll help? They'll blow people each other up with homemade bombs. They'll cut people up. They'll use baseball bats. They'll use ice picks. And they'll make their own guns. Why will they do that? Because mankind is corrupt. And we're a bunch of liars, thieves, and murderers. That's what we are. And it's not going to solve any problem. So that's what's going on here. And God says, look, I'm going to stop. I'm going to put a stop to it. And he did put a stop to it. Now, Satan never grows weary in his attempt to unite all mankind under a one-world ruler. He has tried many times to accomplish this goal. His schemes in history include Nimrod, to Babylon, to Rome, to Hitler, to the communists, and now the United Nations. Everything the UN is attempting was tried first by Nimrod and his government at Babylon. Everything that the United Nations is trying to do right now, Nimrod did. And the Tower of Babel. All those things were tried then. And they would have succeeded had God not stepped in. Now what about the one world government that's coming under the Antichrist? Will they succeed? Yeah. They will succeed. Unless God intervenes, which he will do again. There's no question about it. God's not going to put up with that. Architecture has been an obsession with would-be one-world rulers. That's one thing, they love architecture. Look at Greece, and when Alexander the Great and all that one-world government, the architecture of Greece. Look at the architecture of Rome. Look at when Hitler was in power, he had a special architect by the name of Albert Speer, who became like his second man in government. And he had this tremendous architecture. The city of Berlin, I mean, everything. I've seen models of it, pictures of the models of it. Amazing. He said, we're going to last 1,000 years, this great architect. And the Tower of Babel, this great tower. When people come see this great tower, they look up at it. That's why when you go see government buildings, they're great big columns, that you're supposed to be in awe of the government. Well, the government's supposed to be in awe of you. Not the other way around. It is believed by many that Nimrod intended to build a tower all the way to the third heaven. It is more likely he intended a huge tower to reach to the clouds of the first heaven. He wanted to make us a name or a monument to man. Make us a name, We'll name this tower Nimrod. It's going to be higher than the World Trade Center, And there's I don't know what's the tallest building now. It used to be many, many, many years ago, the Empire State Building, And they just, skyscrapers, they call them. Okay. Let's look in verse 6. We're going to find out how different languages have first appeared on the earth. Verse 6. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. So what happened was, when they got off the ark, they migrated over to the plains of Shinar. And they began to grow, and they began to organize themselves. They had to form a civil government to enforce the death penalty. And pretty soon, leaders rose up. After a while, Nimrod rose up. And he united the people with a one-world religion. They had a one-world religion, one-world government, and a one-world language. And they said, look, let's get together and build us a tower. And so from that place, God scattered them, confounded their tongues and their languages. And they went from that place to all the earth. Now, isn't it peculiar that when you study history, and they go back as far as they can go, This is what they say. They say we all began between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. That's where civilization began. And we branched out from there. How did they determine that? From different kinds of genetics and languages and different clues that brought them all the way back to where the Bible said it started in the first place. So I'll give them credit. They found they have come to find out what the Bible already told them. It was from that place that people began to spread out over all the earth. God, in his foreknowledge, knew that mankind would use human government to do whatever they imagined. So he nipped their skin in the bud and caused them to speak in different languages. They could not get along and separated themselves. The Lord came down. This is an appearance of the angel of the Lord, or the Lord Jesus Christ before his incarnation. And we're going to look at some of those next week, because the Lord does come down. And the Lord said in Genesis 18, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which has come unto me, and if not, I will know. So God does come down. And when we study dispensations, one of the things that you'll discover is that God comes down at the end of each dispensation. He comes down. At the end of the dispensation of the law, Jesus Christ came down and saved us all. I washed away our sins on the cross of Calvary. And at the end of the day of grace, the church age, you know what? Jesus is going to come down and rapture us out. And then at the end of the tribulation period, he's coming down and rule and reign in Jerusalem. Are there any questions or comments?